We are really happy to welcome longtime golf writer and golf equipment expert Ed Travis to Back Nine Report. Ed, great to see you this morning.
Well, nice seeing you, Fred. Thanks for asking me.
Hey, Ed, I know you really stay tuned into the golf equipment news and information and all the great technology that's coming out. And the USGA and the RNA, golf's ruling bodies, have been conducting an extensive study of the effects of greater distance on golf over the past couple of years. And they recently published their latest findings and gave a hint maybe at what may be coming in the near future. Could you just give us a brief summary of that?
Well, sure. They've been going through this for several years now. And the conclusion that I came to, and this is not really anything news to anybody who's been following it, is that the USGA, and specifically the former executive director, Mike Davis, started this process from the idea that the ball went too far. And the ball was too hot, it had to be rolled back. Well, they got a lot of pushback on that. And so they, among other things, decided to take a look at things besides the ball, like the rebound on the face of modern drivers. They have gone through an extensive study, and I've looked at all the data that they published and tried to think of it in a non-prejudicial manner. But the conclusion I keep coming to is that they started out with the idea that the ball went too far because they thought it went too far. And if you look at the data, it's hard to come to that conclusion. But in any event, that's where we're at. So we're going to see the ball restricted, but more likely and more quickly, the rebound effect on the faces of drivers restricted. Now, the second part of that is, and they finally, I would like to think that the numerous articles that I've written on this topic had some effect, although I have no indication that it has. But they have decided that evidently that the proper way to do this is to leave you and I, as golf enthusiasts, with the same rebound on the face of our drivers and not mess with the golf ball. However, elite players, and that is yet to be defined, but presumably those are people who are on the PGA Tour and perhaps the top college golfers, top amateur golfers, are going to be restricted in the kind of equipment they can use. We don't know any of the details. We don't know when it's going to happen, but this last press release pretty much made it very obvious that that's what's going to happen. And going off the topic of being unbiased about this, because I'm extremely biased, I think this is a huge, we've got three huges mistake.
Yeah, so number one, I get that, that they've kind of gone into this thing with a whole bias in the first place, that, oh, there's a problem, the sky is falling and we've got to do something about it. And so they come up with all these ideas. When you look at it, though, as you have done, the actual growth, like over the past 10 years, has been fairly gradual, and they don't address better conditioned athletes, better trained athletes, firmer fairways, some of the other things that maybe affect this. They're putting it all back on the equipment or the ball, and they want to change that. And you brought up the idea of bifurcation here. So you think there's a real chance that what the pros and elite amateurs play versus what you and I play, the equipment could be different in the very near future.
I would replace the word could with would. There's absolutely no question in my mind that they went into this whole process, as you said, with a bias. That was very evident from the beginning. And what the tragic part about this is that it doesn't relate to what's going on. Let's put it another way. One of the big reasons why they think the ball goes too far is that it has made old line golf courses unusable. Well, that's been going on forever. And if you read any of the history of equipment for the last 150 years, that's been an argument that people have, I presume, come to blows over. I mean, this is not something simple, going back simply to when the titanium-headed driver first, or large-headed steel driver first came out. Callaway brought one out called the Big Bertha. And everybody was just jumping, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced white bread, da 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 da. And the average driving distance on the tour started to go up. Well, okay, you had a better club. Titanium heads came in, but the big difference just before the titanium heads came in was the advent of the solid golf ball with a soft cover, so it could be hit really hard. And the guys with a lot of ability and a lot of talent, I don't put myself in that list, could not only hit it a long way, but they could make it stop on the greens. So if you add to the fact that those facts, which that was the Pro V1, if you add to those facts the fact that agronomy on golf courses has gone just through the roof, they've gotten so much better, they use so much less water and so much less in the way of chemicals, it's just astonishing. I put in that article that I wrote recently that a friend of mine said to me that the snip meter reading, in other words, the speed of the roll, how much roll you get on PGA Tour type fairways under usual conditions, is somewhere around what it was when he was a kid on the greens. Well, I'm sorry, but that doesn't seem to be factored into the USGA's thinking. Why? I have no idea, but I do know that they started out with this idea that the ball went too far, that they were using up too much land, that they couldn't play the old courses, and da 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 da. And I'm sorry, I just think that they came at it the wrong way, and then they've aggravated the situation by going through this runaround called the Distance Insights Report, which is I think I wrote that they didn't want to have a repeat of the groove hassle debacle.
The ping debacle. Yes.
Yeah, and that was Ping, and Karsten Solheim, was it whether he was correct or wrong, stood up to the USGA and then stood up to the PGA Tour. And I think the USGA learned from that, gee, we don't want to go making pronouncements that somebody's going to get mad at us about. A couple of years ago, I put in a column that I wrote that I don't know if I would want to take on a company the size of a Cushnet by saying that their number one product, their flagship product, i.e. the Pro V1, the Pro V1X, can't be used anymore on tour. But getting over to this question of the rebound in the face of drivers, the real problem about this is, and that's something that they have not addressed, to my knowledge, is what happens to the equipment companies. And they spend millions and millions of dollars every year. I've been out to a number of different equipment companies' plants and looked at the tremendous resources that they put into making their clubs better. And they're selling them to you and I, and the guys on tour are being paid to play them. Well, one of the things that I've been told many times by people in the club business is, gee, if Tiger Woods is playing a particular driver, that helps our sales. Okay, well, I'll buy that. I don't know that it's absolutely true, but at least I'll buy it as being something that's a good possibility. But if you can't all of a sudden tie the driver that the pros on tour are using because it has a restricted performance specification with the drivers that I can go to my local PGA Tour Superstore and buy, what's that going to do to the club company's business? I think it's lacking in understanding of the industry by the USGA. Go one step farther. You mentioned a minute ago that players were getting more athletic, they were getting stronger, they were getting faster. Look at any sport. I'm old enough to remember watching on television when they broke the 4-minute mile. Well, now they're breaking it in high school. So that's not a process that's going to change as far as PGA Tour players are concerned. The athleticism of guys on tour is going to do nothing but get better. So then the question is, the USGA is going to put on these regulations about how much rebound they face on a driver can have, but how are they going to regulate the fact that the guys are getting more athletic and they're getting faster, using better training methods, et cetera, and so they swing faster? That doesn't seem to me that they've made any consideration of that. So the average driving distance is going to continue to go up.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I agree 100% with you on that. And that was the point I wanted to make too, how this affects the equipment companies and their business model, their marketing plan now of these tour pros using this equipment. And then guys like you and me wanting to go out and use it and buy it, spend money for it, because we saw Tiger Woods use it, or Rory McIlroy or somebody. And if it works for him, it's got to be great for us. So yeah, and there's a lot more that comes into that too for the average golfer now, with club fitting, all that stuff becoming important. But bifurcation, as a rule, Ed, you and I are old enough to think that maybe that's not a good thing. And it does appear that maybe that's the way things are going. But I would sure hate to see it. I had kind of hoped, and I'll let you weigh in on this before I let you go. I'd kind of hoped that with Michael Wan coming to the USGA, Michael has a pretty good feeling for the whole industry, for the whole marketing concept. He had to have, where he came up through the LPGA and get everybody included in bringing that thing along and growing it like he did. And he has a lot better feeling. He's not stuck in that old stodgy USGA khaki pants, blue blazer kind of thing. I'd hoped that maybe he could see and bring some reason to the USGA on this, and maybe he will yet. But do you see them maybe backing off this thing at all, or you think they're just pretty much all guns blazing, barging right ahead?
Yes, but I'll because I know that you have extensive experience in business as I do. When you hire someone to come in and run your company, do you hire him because he doesn't believe in what you believe in? No, you hire him because he has roughly, maybe not exactly, but roughly the same vision. And I don't know Michael Wan. I have tremendous respect for what he did to the LPGA. He took an organization that was lost and was losing tournaments and losing sponsors, and in a relatively short, less than a decade, turned it around completely. And so I have tremendous respect for that. But I also think that the reason he got the job, that Mike Davis's job as executive director, was because the guys on the board of directors, the USGA, interviewed him and said, there's a guy that believes as we do, or can run things the way we want them run. So it's unfortunate.
I hope that he's able to convince him otherwise. I just I have so much respect for him and what he's done over the past 10, 12 years. And I was really happy that he went to USGA, because if ever there was a organization that needed to be updated, needs somebody like him, it was the USGA. So Ed, thank you so much for coming in and chatting with us today. This is great stuff. And I'm sure as we progress with this, we'll have you back in again sometime.
Well, Fred, it's always my pleasure, and I enjoy talking with you every time.
Thanks, Ed.